Long time no see. A lot has happened, and I even had a baby. It has been 3 weeks postpartum now, and I just wanted to pop on in here to let you know my birth story, and then I think in another video too I will talk about my postpartum experience, which I think doesn't get talked enough about. Doesn't get talked about enough, so that'll be in another video. So for my birth story, she came 2 days after her due date, and I had this thing. I was wondering, like, oh, when is she gonna come? I was looking up, like, just things about Leos, because that's her sun sign, and I read somewhere that their favorite numbers were 2, 4, 6, and that their favorite day was Sunday. And when I read that, my ears started ringing. So lo and behold, Sunday, August 4th, she decided to come. I was sitting on the couch. It was 10:55 a.m. My husband was playing a video game, or about to play a video game, and all I heard was pop, pop. I was like, ow. And my husband looked at me, and then all I felt was this, like, gush of fluid coming out. Luckily, I was wearing the dress that I said I'm gonna wear until I go into labor or give birth, and that dress had ended up catching all that fluid, so not a lot got on the couch, thankfully. Since my water had broke, my husband's like, what are we gonna do? And I was like, well, my doctor said there's no rush, but we do need to get ready. So I ended up doing some cleaning, and my husband went and took a shower, and as I was doing that, my contractions started revving up. I did not keep count of my contractions. I didn't see how many apart they were. My water had broke, and I was just like, I know I need to go. So I think we ended up getting to the hospital around 12 in the afternoon, somewhere in there. Ended up walking. Definitely people could tell my water had broken the way I was walking. My contractions were getting stronger. With the birthing class that I took called Birth Box, which so thankful I did, it was really a mind over matter, and that I needed to take each contraction at a time, so that was very ingrained in my mind. Before I took that Birth Box class, I was dead set on having unmedicated birth, and that Birth Box put into my head that no matter what you choose, we're not in control of our birth. So it's more about being open-minded to things and just going with the flow and listening to your body, the most important thing. And that was also at the forefront. I had my birth plan written, and I had my tools that I was going to use in my birthing experience, I guess you would say, and all in my hospital bag. We ended up leaving my bag in the car because my husband was like, well, I wonder if they send you home, so let's just not get it right now. I'm like, oh, okay. So that didn't go as planned. Got to triage. They're like, oh, so how can we help you? I'm like, yeah. I was like, I'm pretty sure my water broke. And they were like, okay. So they ended up telling me to change. I could not figure for the life of me how to put on a hospital gown. My husband had to help me, and it took us about 10 minutes to figure it out. Ended up laying on the bed. A nurse came and checked on me, wrapped me up. She checked to see if I was dilated. She's like, oh, yeah. She's like, you're definitely water has broken, and I don't know, like, it's not in the movies where everything just gushes out. Like, it comes out, but it continuously comes out. For me, in phases. So I had to wear, like, an adult diaper, like, Depends, in the car, so I wouldn't get it everywhere. And they ended up giving me, like, a pad to wear, because I was, fluid was coming out. They're like, yeah, you're definitely getting admitted today. And I was like, yeah, I know. So at that point, my contractions were getting much more stronger, and I was just breathing through them. I was doing good. I felt like I was like clenching my fist just to feel something else, like digging my nail into my palm, to really kind of like distract me or stare at something while I was breathing. And they monitored me for a little bit until my room was ready. So we ended up getting into my room, and I had a labor and delivery nurse. I'll just call her Kay. And Kay was pretty awesome. She was like, they asked me what type of birthing I wanted, and I was like, I want to try to see if I can do it medicated, but I'm not opposed to like epidural or anything like that. So I just want to experience it. And she was like, all right. She was like, for my patients that go in Medicaid, she's like, it's more mind over matter. And she's like, we're going to try different positions. There's a peanut ball and a birth ball. And I was like, okay, I want the birth ball. So I ended up getting on that. She ended up putting on another robe. At this point, I was wearing like a diaper. Fluid was all coming out of me, so she had to change my pad and stuff for me. My husband was holding my hand and making sure I was doing good, rubbing my shoulder when I was birth ball. Then I decided to get on top of the bed and put my hands on the top and like kind of lay down on my back and kind of sway us to help with low back pain, because that's what I was having. I ended up laying down on the bed some more. I was doing really well. I was taking it contraction at a time. When Kay did come in and was like, hey, like, if you, I'm not going to mention it again. She was like, but if you want to have a epidural, just let me know. But then an hour later, she came back. She was like, I know I said I wouldn't mention it, but on the weekends, our anesthesiologist is not on call, so he's going to go home or go wherever for a break, what have you. So if you do want it, he just thought you would mention it. Or, if you do want it later down, you can get it anytime. But she's like, if you do want it, she was like, it's going to be a wait. And I'm like, okay, but I'm good, thank you. And I really was doing good. She was like asking if I wanted to do different positions, so I was doing those. And then I decided to lay down and put the peanut ball in between my legs. And I think that's where I went wrong. Because when I started doing that, my contractions were really getting stronger. And when I had my contractions, I thought I would have time in between them to relax a little. And when I was laying like that, I did not have time to relax. Like, they were coming back to back to back, and to the point where I was feeling a lot of pressure in my butt. And my nurse thought at like any time baby comes, so she really was getting the room ready. And she did check me, and I was only closer to 5. And I was like, oh man. So when she did contact the doctor about it, the doctor's like, well, since your Pitocin is broken, your water has broken, you're kind of on a time crunch. And I put that in quotation marks because they don't want the baby in there the whole time when your water's broken. So she's like, I don't know how you feel about Pitocin, but she was like, they would like to start you on that at 4 if you haven't progressed. But she's like, the way you're doing, I just want to wait till, there. And she was very adamant about only checking at certain times and not checking too often because she's like bacteria, which I was like, oh my god, these nurses are great. Kay nurse was great. Doing her thing. So I was doing great, but the contraction was getting stronger, and I felt like my butt was gonna fall out, to be honest. The way it was pushing and so much pressure, like, it was honestly painful, and I couldn't catch my breath, and I was really in some hella pain. Yeah, I was in some pain, which I knew birthing has pain. Like, birth is not painless. There's going to be pain and there's going to be pressure. I knew that going in. It was a point where I couldn't catch my breath. I was growling kind of and moaning and like doing this thing to like help me get through the contraction. And at that point I told myself, okay, at 4 o'clock they said they were going to give me Pitocin. I'm going to wait till 3. And if I ask my body if I feel like my body needs an epidural, I'm going to get the epidural. It's 3 o'clock around. I asked myself that question. I was like, body, what do I need? I was like, I need a freaking epidural. I need it. So I told my husband, I was like, call them, tell them I need it. So she was like, okay. She was like, I was like, I know I have to wait. Like, I'm good. Like, I can wait. I know I need it. And I had to wait an hour. And then the anesthesiologist came. The doctor came. Yeah. I was like, oh, so glad to see you. I was like, I'm sorry I waited so long. But I sat up. When I had to sit up, they asked my husband to leave so they can put the epidural in. Which I was like, fine by me. And when I sat up, my contractions were a little bit more bearable. So that's why I say I think that's where I went wrong when I laid down. But I was like, I'm getting this epidural anyway. Thought about backing out of it, but I was like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. So I had to sit, through each contraction. I would let her know when I had a contraction. I'd breathe through that and hold Kay's hand. And then the doctor put the numbing stuff, anesthetic in, which they say that hurts the worst. It felt like a sting, and I was fine. Then the epidural went in. That was nice. I think I had like 3 or 4 contractions during that time. And then I finally got to lay down, and instantly felt a lot better, less intense, and I was just like, I feel like I can actually breathe. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Then they stayed in there, the doctor stayed in there to make sure like I didn't feel, or if it just wasn't on one side. So it took about 15 minutes or so, and they're like, okay, good, can you wiggle your toes? I'm like, yeah, I just can't really feel my left as much as my right, but it's like, there's like no pain really. And they would constantly ask me like what my pain was, and it slowly died down during that time. Obviously if you get epidural, you have to get a catheter in, so you can continuously empty out your pee, so your bladder's not really in the way of baby. So when I got that, obviously my nurse Kay had to bring my husband back in, and I was feeling great. I was like, oh my god. And she's like, all right, well, since you're now like chilling and relaxing, she was like, you want dinner? And I was like, yes. They ended up giving me bone broth, 2 types of jello, and a popsicle. Popsicle was grape, and I was like, that's for my husband, because I don't do grape flavored things. Orange jello is okay, let my husband eat that. I ate the bone broth and the other red jello, and ended up drinking a lot of apple juice and water, so apple juice has been a lifesaver. So during that time, we were watching the grown-up movies. We watched both grown-up movies, and I believe in one time during that grown-up, I think the last grown-up movie, my blood pressure had dropped. Not to where it was anything scary, but it was not making baby too happy. And with that, my nurse was like, all right. So she gave me some blood pressure medicine. That seemed to help a little bit, but then she ended up turning off the epidural for a while so it could help regulate it, and that ended up being good. And all while this was happening, my monitor kept like moving around. So I ended up having to like press it with my hand so they could hear her heartbeat and stuff. But I was just relaxing and watching movies, and we watched Big Bang Theory for a good long while, and then I ended up getting another nurse, so Nurse K left because it was shifting, and I got Nurse M, and I loved Nurse M as well. In the hospital I went to, the labor and delivery, each labor and delivery nurse only has 1 patient at a time, so you definitely get, catered to, which is nice, and it should be that way. So with that being said, Nurse K and Nurse M came in, like, hey, like, switched over. Nurse M was telling me about her stuff, and obviously with each nurse I tried to make conversation with them and ask them about things, if they had kids, what would they do? And they're like, you know. So we had all those conversations with them. Nurse M was pretty awesome. She was like, okay, she's like, we're gonna do like a practice push. I think this was during Big Bang Theory, what I was watching. I'll add this, my husband is being very supportive. So when we did a practice push, she told me how to push. She's like, push, you know, with your butt, kind of, which I sort of did, and she said, hold your breath. So I tried that, but I ended up listening to my body and breathing out when I would do it, and that seemed to help. So she's like, all right, she's like, you know, she was like, I'll come check on you in blah blah minutes, and we'll see where you're at. And the next thing I know, she's like, all right, next time we come in, it's gonna be time to push. And I'm like, okay, all right. So I ended up doing that. She came back in, she's like, all right, it's time to push. So my husband held my leg, I held my other one, but she kind of helped. And she was down there making sure like baby's coming out. She asked me for wanted to see, so then he ended up getting a mirror, which was pretty awesome because I wanted to see. So I ended up seeing a little. She's like, so the way I think I pushed for like an hour to get her into the canal, and I would push only with my contractions, and I felt my contractions still, but it was just a lot of pressure. And I think she made the comment, my nurse made the comment, she's like, I'm surprised you're not saying anything about pressure. And I was like, oh, I feel it. It's nothing compared to what it was with the epidural. Like, this is doable. So I would just breathe through them. So when baby got to the canal, she's like, okay, I'm gonna go call the doctor, let her know, like, you're ready. Unbeknownst to me, there was also somebody next door also giving birth at the same time and with the same doctor. So that doctor, which wasn't my OB, she was an on-call, because mine was not, because it was the weekend, which is fine, but that doctor was pretty cool too. We'll call her Dr. J. Dr. J was like, oh, she was like, well, you seem to be doing good. She's like, let me go handle that one. So she went over to that side and handled that person first before she came to me. So I think we waited, I don't know how long. My husband was like, it seemed like an hour, and I was like, oh. So we're just having conversation, and then we heard baby being born over there because he heard crying. And then with that, the Dr. J came over. She's like, all right, you ready? And I was like, I guess so. We were having conversation. She was just like, yep, just same as you've been pushing. And Nurse M was a very good counter, and I really appreciate Nurse M. So Nurse M would tell me how to push, and whenever my contractions came in, so we'd have conversation, I'd be like, all right, I'm getting a contraction out, and then I'd push. And honestly, she was like, if you would have pushed like my nurse, Dr. J was like, yeah, she's like, if I've done this, I have to come over here first. You push like champion. I'm like, okay. And I think within 3 or 4 pushes, she was born. My baby girl was born at 11:35 p.m. August 4th, 2024. And she weighed 7 pounds, 9 ounces, and she was 20 inches long. And after she was born and on my chest, I don't know what the hell happened. It was kind of a blur after that. I don't know what was happening. I believe my husband's like, your placenta was out. My husband, I birthed the placenta. My husband cut the cord after it stopped pulsating. I believed I got a 2nd degree tear, which is most common. So yeah. I couldn't ask for a better birth. I even got my golden hour, which was nice. That was nice. So I couldn't ask for a better birth than the nurses and doctors that I had during labor delivery. Was pretty awesome. Pretty good. So postpartum recovery was a different story. Which I guess I can go into that a little bit. I didn't end up trying to breastfeed until 3 in the morning. just because with everything going on. And then I had trouble with latching with her. I think my nipples were too shallow, to be honest, like too small, so they ended up giving me a nipple shield, which helped her latch, but she would only favor one side, so that was kind of frustrating. There's obviously with postpartum, they, as labor delivery only has one patient at a time, postpartum nurses have about 6 at a time, so you don't get as much catering and attending to as you would with labor and delivery. And so that was interesting. But the nurses there were pretty awesome as well. They answered my questions and answered the call button when I needed and all that good stuff. But I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I believed I stayed postpartum 2 days, but every so often they would come in and check baby, check me, check my fundal massage, check my bleeding, and make sure I wasn't clotting. I had to have somebody help me in the bathroom once or twice, and then they were like, alright, since you can walk around. I walked around about after an hour. But there is a lot of people coming in and out, especially in the morning. And when you're learning to be a parent, that is very interesting, and learning to try to breastfeed. And breastfeed is natural, but it does not come naturally. I will say that, which I think I will talk about more about breastfeeding during my postpartum video. But after those 2 days, everything was looking well, and we were sent home. So, and thus the journey of motherhood began independently at the house with my husband and I. So, and now we're here 3 weeks later. So, yeah. It's pretty interesting. I'm surprised I can even talk correctly. I think I filmed this about 3 times, to be honest, because I kept getting interrupted, but you know, it's all good. So with that being said, I'm Emily Roof, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye!